I'm so happy to be here. This has been a fantastic trip so far. I really appreciate the department inviting me, Michael inviting me. I appreciate Michael and Priya's help putting this exhibition up. If it wasn't for them, I would probably still be on that piece installing right now and working my way around the room. So this is fantastic. And I really enjoyed meeting with a number of the students today. In my job as a teacher, my role as a teacher, students typically have to sit through my lectures, and I usually get between 7 and 9 or 10 people. This is in excess of like 20 or 30, so it's fantastic. I almost want to take a photograph just to prove to everyone in my department that, look, people actually will come to hear me speak. And I do realize that there are some faculty members who may have insisted on that, but we don't need to disclose that, so I do appreciate that. But I do appreciate the hospitality and being here. It's super exciting for me. So I will do my best to get through this presentation without going off onto too many tangents. I do have some notes, and I will not apologize for going over 35 minutes, but I'll do my best to kind of keep it a little bit more concise. So I'd like to spend a little bit of time now talking to you all about my artistic journey, kind of start to write about now, give or take. And I want to do this because I want the students in the room to get a sense as to how one can create a linear body of work, what it means to build one idea upon another over the course of time. Because I think for us, as young practicing artists, it is daunting to think about, well, I have to come up with something that is conceptually strong, and I have to do that now. But in reality, this is something that develops over time. So don't put too much pressure on yourselves. I put a little bit, but not too much. And I always want people to think about my students, young artists in general, to remember that looking at things, reading things, and ultimately making things is what makes the artist, right? We can think about art all day long, but that doesn't mean we're an artist. So you have to make things, and along the line, along that path, you make a lot of garbage. And we're going to see some of that today in my presentation, but without making that work, I wouldn't be where I am today. So my artistic journey is filled with ups and downs. And the pursuit of art making sprinkled with extended moments of laziness and absolute procrastination. I think I do my best work when I procrastinate. All of my colleagues and my students and everyone else probably disagrees with me. I get that 100% from my dad. It is his fault. But procrastinating is part of who I am. However, this artistic journey that I've been on for the last number of decades has allowed me the opportunity to spend a considerable amount of time doing what I really love, and that is drawing, painting, and occasionally spending time in nature. And so in order for us to kind of get a sense as to where I'm at now, we need to take a look at where I've come from. And that means we start a little bit closer to the beginning. And so I come from a pretty large family. I'm one of 7. I am the oldest, and our photo albums are sprinkled with fun images like this. Mom is an amateur photographer. She's the big cameras and all that kind of stuff. And so at different vacations, we would be posed in different ways and then photographed. And these are some of my favorite ones. My least favorite is the one where we went through a 2 or 3 year phase where on every vacation, all 7 of us had to wear the exact same shirt so that if we got lost at some venue, Mom and Dad could run around looking for the weird kid with the white and blue striped shirt. And so I left those images out. But here we are at a couple of different places. So I come from this large family, and I am lucky enough to have parents who have supported my on-again and off-again interest and love in art. And by that I mean I was, from a young age, fairly adept at copying images. And this is one of my earliest pieces, and I really love this because it is an example of, or a representation, a metaphor of who I am to this day. As someone who loves nature, is vegan, and kind of appreciates all creatures, this speaks to me. And I don't know how old, probably 5, 6, 7, 4, 8, I don't know. But when I look at this today, I love it because of the simplicity and the accessibility of this image. image. When I look at this here, I definitely wouldn't stick a dowel in an alligator's mouth to keep it from eating the fish, but as this young artist, I still look at this as kind of a moment of early genius. I absolutely love it, and I'm so happy that my parents have this, and I really look forward to one day acquiring this piece for my own refrigerator collection. But right now, it's at Mom and Dad's house. I'm really grateful for what my parents did and for all the support. These are just a little hard to see, but these are some examples of my raw talent as a 10-year-old. 1987, 10-year-old. So it is fair to question the choice of imagery, but not the talent here. So as a 10-year-old, I don't know why, because violence has never really been my thing. I don't know why there is blood dripping from the dagger or where this muscle figure came from, but I do really like the interesting twigs that are the legs of this cartoon character on the right-hand side. So from the beginning, I don't have a lot of early memories of my relationship to and with art. I remember when I was maybe 10 years old, I would go for this quote-unquote private lesson where they would put me in a room with a drafting table and I would just copy, using colored pencils, images of animals from National Geographic magazines. And I remember a little bit about that, but I have a much more vivid memory of like that post-lesson slice of pizza that was dinner. And yet we did have some early successes. 1985, so 7, 8 years old at this point. I've always been a relatively diminutive, short individual, and so I love this picture up here on the right-hand side, right? So here I am with people, other elementary school people, and not my age, because there were varying age brackets for the quote-unquote award winners, but I just like that as, and that's also probably the most dressed up I've ever been in an Argyle sweater vest, so I like that image too. But this is some evidence of some early successes and my parents' support of me as an artist. So that being said, it wasn't until middle school that I really started to come into my own as an artist. And at the same time, it was in middle school that I started to understand that art is a commodity that other people would be interested in. And so in middle school, I spent a lot of time drawing on loose leaf paper just images of sports cars for whatever reason. I've never really been a car guy, but I did these because they were kind of fun. And it was at this moment that I started to realize that, hey, other people want them because the person who sat next to me at a desk in my social sciences or sciences class wanted one and asked me to draw him one. And I said, sure. And I suggested that we make a trade, right? We were little kids, we didn't really have any money, so I'll do this drawing if you give me something. And he said, sure, whatever you want. And I said, I want you to create a bootleg copy of Milli Vanilli's Blame It on the Rain, which doesn't mean a lot to a lot of you, but for those of us who were born in the 70s and the 80s and maybe a little earlier, this now infamous group of lip-syncing individuals, this was what I wanted, a burned cassette tape of Blame It on the Rain. And if you are bored later on, not during this, but later, just Google or pull up YouTube video of this because the dancing is fantastic. The fashion that you see in the videos from this time is all coming back around, and that's a whole nother topic, like when fashion cycles and you start to feel your age. So anyway, I made a trade for this, and it was fantastic, and I stand by the choice that, despite what happened to, or what was acknowledged by Milli Vanilli as a group. So my artistic interests or pursuit kind of continued a little bit here and there, and in high school I went on 11th grade to take oil painting classes at the local community center, and I really enjoyed this. I was working with these ladies who were probably in their 50s, 60s, 70s, maybe 40s, and they were so flirtatious that it really freaked me out. As a 16-year-old, I didn't know what to do, so I was like this little weird kid who was like at a table with all these women around them, like trying to talk to him, and I don't feel comfortable here. But anyway, but I was able to, they taught me the basics of what it meant to be a painter. And so these are some of the things that I'm creating in 11th grade. And to my dismay, they are both hanging in my parents' basement, which again, these are great examples of embarrassing work for me. But I think it's important that we see that I am actually making something from a young age. So after high school, I went on to Michigan State University, where I received a degree in zoology and cell and developmental biology, because at that point, I wanted to be a dentist, because at that point, money meant more than anything for some reason. And so I spent a wonderful 5.5 years at Michigan State. I was a horrible student in undergrad. But at the end of this experience, I started to apply for dental school, and I started to really think about what it was that I was interested in doing. And I had a little bit of a break before going into dental school, and I decided, I love art, I still really do enjoy it. I'm going to take a figure drawing class at a local community college. So I took this class, and I loved it. It reminded me of how much I really enjoyed making art in high school. And so I wrestled with this idea of, all right, Josh, are you going to spend the rest of your life with your hands in people's mouths and get all of this money and all of the other things, or are you going to make art? And so at the end of that summer, I decided to change paths completely, much to the dismay of my parents and my grandparents. They were not happy with this decision. But I changed paths, and I decided at that moment, I am going to be a famous artist. The famous part hasn't happened, but I've been an artist ever since, and I've been really happy with that decision, never looked back. Now, there was one minor problem with this plan to be a famous artist, and that was I hadn't made any art since high school. I took one design class at Michigan State, and I really enjoyed it, but that was one class. So as a result, in 2001 or so, I started making things. I made mediocre paintings, okay paintings, bad paintings. I enrolled in a painting class and a drawing class at a local community center, and I started making paintings and drawings in my parents' basement, which is not a good idea if you're working with oil paint, so I don't recommend it. Ventilation is important. But these are the things that I was making in about 2001, 2002, just after my undergrad degree. I'm trying to teach myself how to paint. I'm trying to make things. And there are moments in each of these where I can see the linear nature of my progression and what I was interested in. But there are also moments in each of these that are extremely embarrassing, but looking back on it, extremely important. And so again, this reiterates the importance of making things. Just make things. So in 2003, somehow I managed to get into an MA program in painting at Wayne State University. Within a year, I got into the MFA program in painting. And by 2004, I'm making large-scale paintings, right? And I think it's important to note that from this to this is 2 years, but from this to this is hundreds of really bad paintings, all right? And so in these, this is the work that I'm making in 2004, late 2004, early 2005 in graduate school. I was making these large-scale figurative works. This was 5 by 7, probably 4 by 5, 4 by maybe 2.5 or 3 feet on the right-hand side. So I love these works. They're really inspired by Jenny Saville's work that was really popular in the late 90s, early 2000s. And so I'm experimenting, I'm playing with these ideas, really short story, but also kind of funny. So when you all, as young adults, graduate from university, and you start your first job, you get ready for your first job, your parents are super excited to have you out of the house, and that means you take all your crap with you and you leave. A lot of us as young adults will leave a lot of our stuff there because we don't really want it, but we don't want to get rid of it. And I was like that with some of my paintings. So I moved out and I left that one on the right-hand side at my parents' house. And they kept telling me, they're like, Josh, come take this. We don't need this. We don't want this. You're a little bit weird. You're not painting animals anymore, so get this out of our house. And I kept putting it off and off and off. And then one day, my parents had a garage sale, and unbeknownst to me, my brother, Nate, who's 9 years younger than me, sold that for $3. And did not give me the $3. Anyway, that was like my first sale, right? And I didn't even know who bought it. I can't even put that on my CV for my collections. But needless to say, right? Like I made that mistake. And so when you leave and your parents tell you to take stuff with you, take stuff with you. Don't leave it in their basement. Anyway, so in graduate school, 2005 or so, I really started to come into my own, and I made work that was about the sublime, the idea of that which is beautiful but also grotesque, that which is alluring but also repulsive. And so this is the kind of stuff that I was making. So I'm combining this idea of the figure and science. I'm inventing these biomorphic forms. And just some more examples of what I'm doing in graduate school, playing with the idea of concept and display, etc. So in graduate school, at the end of my tenure, 2006, 2007 or so, I really started to realize that, I'm interested in this idea of beauty. And after graduating, I had the freedom to really explore the nature of beauty. And this is something that is still present in my work today. And I want to spend the next few minutes talking about the progression and how beauty is a part of my exploration. So if we take a step back and we think about this transition and we think about this idea of beauty on an individual and personal level, we're all familiar with what the idea of beauty, or what an idea of beauty is, right? The myriad adages of beauty. Beauty is all around us. It's in the eye of the beholder, etc., etc. And yet so many of us miss the everyday moments of beauty that are all around us. Simultaneously, we find beauty in different moments and different objects, and we those are individual, and yet there are moments that we ignore them and moments that we acknowledge them. But these are the moments that I think make life so great, the subjectivity of beauty. And if we stop for a moment and really appreciate it, then we can really gain a truer sense of what beauty is. So one of the first times that I really started to notice the subjectivity of beauty was a moment when I was least expecting it. And this was when my brother Chris and I, this was 2011, my brother Chris and I decided to take a 3-week road trip. This is us 12 years ago. Mount Rainier. This is us a couple of months ago in July in Yosemite, looking a little bit rougher, a little bit older. But needless to say, nature is important. Nature is important to me. So we decided in 2011 we were going to take a road trip, a 3-week road trip from Denver, Colorado, where he lived, up to Denali National Park in Alaska, and then back down. And we were going to visit all of the national parks along the way. And so these are just a couple of the highlights from our trip, right? This was like the fire that we were most proud of. Thankfully, we were near a little body of water, and we were able to go over there and bring buckets of water to put it out when we wanted to go to sleep, because sometimes they get so big. I won't talk about what's happening in the rest of these. It's not really relevant. But needless to say, for those of us who aren't aware, so we were right here, and we drove all the way up here, and then all the way back. And then I flew back here, and my brother and I did not talk for about a month or so, which is normal, right? Like, I spent 3 weeks with him. We showered maybe 2 or 3 times. We ate Subway more times than we'd like to admit. But it was an amazing trip. We stopped at so many national parks, slept in the cars, slept in the tents. It was fantastic. If you can do it, I strongly recommend it. Anyway, so on this trip was one of the moments where I really began to appreciate and understand the idea of beauty. And it was a moment that we made our way into Yellowstone National Park, and we came across the Snake River, and we came across this view, this postcard-like view in Yellowstone National Park. Beautiful, right? And so it's so incredibly different from my Midwestern upbringing, the landscape that was the backdrop for that. This is so incredible and sublime compared to what I'm used to. So here I am, we pull into this little kind of offshoot on the roadway. We pull over because we want to take a look at this moment, because we're both kind of awestruck, right? So this is the moment that I see this absolute revelatory moment of beauty. And after what seemed to be just a few minutes, I turned in my brother's direction and saw this. He's reading a book. But it's this book right here that he picked up in the Grand Tetons National Park, which if you knew him, this makes perfect sense. But for the rest of us, this is a ridiculous book to read if you're going to Yellowstone National Park, where there are bears everywhere and other things, right? So And so I turn around, I see my brother sitting there on the edge, and he's reading this book. Now, to be fair, it's a book on bear attacks, so and he's kind of interested in that kind of macabre aspect of nature, and to that point, and after dark and distastefully so, he would enjoy reading out loud passages from this book, which was horrifying, considering there's just a tiny little sliver of nylon between you and the outdoors. And at that point, like, bear spray does not make you feel any better, because every twig that breaks, every chipmunk that says something in the background, you think I thought I was gonna be eaten. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But his reaction to this kind of postcard-like moment was mind-blowing for me. I didn't understand why he was reading a book and not looking at that. And so, for me, like, the definition of beauty is really no different for anyone else's, right? I think about it as something that creates an intense and overt sense of pleasure, of happiness. And as a result, I have found over the years and years of art making that if I change the context or put something in a new or unexpected environment, it can grab the viewer's attention. And so that is what my work is really based upon as a platform to explore beauty. So I want to take the viewer and present a moment out of context so it can grab their attention. And so nature has always inspired me, and I want to quote a naturalist. He said, "We acknowledge life, but we pay so little attention to it. Why? And as beauty abounds, why does it stand so little chance?" And I find that statement so interesting, and also so true. So it's this idea of the missed or ignored beauty, whether it is fleeting or whether it's ubiquitous, that I want to create a path to for the viewer, that I want my work to explore. So based on these images, one would maybe come to the hypothesis that Joshua Newth would be happy creating paintings of animals, of nature, of their flora, fauna, etc. Instead, my interest in my visual exploration kind of takes a dogleg turn. And this is one of the pieces that I really started this exploration of beauty with. This is Almond Joy 3 from 2015-16. It's Almond Joy 3 because I did 2 versions before this and they all stunk. So this is just a small oil painting on paper. So this idea of beauty in the common and everyday moments of life has led me to explore numerous objects, all kinds of different objects, including the Almond Joy, which for a significant portion of my young adult life was always present in my fridge, like snack-sized ones. They were great. So as a result of always having these things around, I knew I was attracted to it, not just because of taste, but also for some other reason. And so, like many artists, when you don't know why you're interested in something, you make art about it or of it or with it, and that opens up this path to figuring out what it is about this object that you are so interested in. And that's what happened with this piece. So in Almond Joy 3, it was somehow the act of pinning, with scientific T-pins, pinning this nondescript piece of confectionery, air quotes, delight, food, on the wall in this seemingly scientific manner, and painting it. It was that act which exposed a sense of beauty and gave me the answer to my question. So it ended up being more about the passive blues of the packaging and the experience of those colors with this hint of greenery, and the taste had something to do with it, but it was about the totality of the experience of this object. So it's the colors and the taste that I was interested in, but I didn't know that until I painted it. So Almond Joy candy bar, over the years, I have noticed that the Almond Joy candy bar changed its wrapper, which to somebody who made art based on the wrapping was really not cool. So I did the only thing I could, and that is I wrote the Hershey's Company, right? So in 2016, I wrote, as a self-proclaimed As a self-proclaimed and socially acknowledged aficionado of the snack-sized Almond Joy, I'm writing to express my dismay at the recent changes to the Almond Joy's packaging. While these seemingly minor design alterations may be an attempt to reinforce the refreshing nature of the confection, they have ultimately negated their connection to beauty created by the pleasant blue juxtaposed with a hint of greenery in the tropics. I realize it's a tall order. However, returning to the previous packaging would restore, it's all about me. I just want you to make it what I love about this. So I sent this off because this is the kind of stuff you can do as an artist. No one else really cares. But you can do this and you can try to change the world one candy bar at a time. The Hershey's company wrote me back. Right? So this is what they say. 2016, Dear Joshua, thank you for reaching out to us and sharing your valuable comments about our insert item here, Almond Joy Candy Bar. At the Hershey's Company, we work tirelessly to bring you the quality candy you have come to love and expect from us. As you can imagine, it's our hope that our products reach consumers in the best possible condition. In order to accomplish this, our marketing department, you didn't read my letter. This is not about the packaging and the colors. You'd think it came to me and was melted or something, right? I don't think so. But anyway, this is how we art waste time as artists, but it's still fun. So this is 2 cakes, right? So I do a lot of not a lot, but I do some work that is based on kitsch and pop culture, and I love this painting. It's beautiful. It's a little piece. And I've also done paintings of an 8-pound bag of French fries from Walmart, potato chips flavored like meat, but whatever, right? So the point of this is I'm interested in this idea of beauty, and beauty runs across all different forms of objects and moments throughout our world. This is Dawn Helps from 2015 or 16. It's a drawing, large. So here I'm working with this frame, which was my neighbor's at the time, an actual frame, and another typically unadorned object, an everyday object. So here's my brother Chris again, 2015 or 16, in my kitchen, because as an artist, sometimes you have to work in places that are not, air quotes, a studio. So this is my kitchen right here. Here's my brother Chris, an engineer in the aeronautics industry, doing his best impersonation of highbrow versus lowbrow. But also, I said, Chris, look like an artist, and that's what he did. All right? If I should just stand like that when I start a semester and see what happens. But anyway, so as for the bottle of soap, right, it's this everyday object that I was always interested in. I loved this object, and it sat on my counter for weeks and months and years. I would get a new one, and I would always enjoy the moment that I had with this when I was in the kitchen. I loved this piece of kitsch, this kitchen object. But I wasn't sure why I was so in love with it until I started making a drawing about it. And it was at that moment that I realized it wasn't about this beautiful and cute little duckling that was being held here, even though I would do that in a heartbeat. It was about the message that was on the bottle that said, Dawn helps save wildlife. And to me, it was this idea that mankind can, if we choose, make amends for totally screwing things up. So this is the piece that I created based on that, and I still love it. This is one of my early successes. This was purchased by the board at the Toledo Museum of Art. Fantastic, love it. Sorry to see it go, but happy it's in its own place. But with this, I want the viewer to look at it and say, you know what? I don't understand this, but he framed it. It's kind of cool. It's well done. I'm going to take a second more with this work of art and see if I can appreciate or figure out what it is that this kind of quirky person over there just made. So 2014 or so, I was out in San Diego walking the beaches. I enjoy walking around places, which I did when I got here and yesterday morning. So San Diego, 2014, I'm walking the beaches, and I come across this dead seagull. And as artists, contemporary artists do now, we take out our phone, we take photographs of everything, and we can have this for visual reference later. We don't even know why we need these images, but we take them. So I took a bunch of photographs of this dead bird here. As an artist, birds have always fascinated me. I love that they are all around us. I love that they're so different one from another. Each one is an individual character. There's a quirkiness about them. These puffins here, there's something adorable and cute and extremely dysfunctional about these little creatures. And at the same time, I'm always curious why in the morning, when our window is open, we appreciate the bird's song, and then the moment we get up, we're like, oh, forget about that, I gotta go. I gotta do things, right? And it's a moment of beauty. And so, 2015-16, I did a big drawing of this dead bird here, of the entitled Larus pacificus, the Pacific gull, large drawing on paper. It's a part of a larger series of dead birds. And after hearing about my affection for creatures, after seeing my drawing of the alligator and the fishes, it's understandable that one would say, okay, so you love nature, you love these creatures, but you're drawing these dead animals. And I wasn't sure why I was interested in these dead animals either. I just kept drawing them because I knew from past experiences and from my grad school faculty yelling at me, Josh, you'll figure it out if you make work, make work, make work, make work. So doing all of these drawings led me to ultimately figure out that it wasn't death that I was interested in, but instead it was the idea of the unmourned, right? The beauty that is absent, the beauty that we could appreciate if we took a second to look at it. So I just want to share with you a beautiful poem, one of my favorites, and this kind of goes back to this idea of, if you want to be an artist, you look at things, you read things, you make things. And so this is a poem by Wisława Szymborska, As Seen from Above, so bear with us as we read through it. A dead beetle lies on the path through the field, 3 pairs of legs folded neatly on its belly. Instead of death's confusion, tidiness and order. The horror of this sight is moderate. Its scope is strictly local, from the wheatgrass to the mint. The grief is quarantine, the sky is blue. To preserve our peace of mind, animals die. More shallowly, they aren't deceased, they're dead. They leave behind, we'd like to think, less feeling and less world. Departing, we suppose, from a stage less tragic. Their meek souls never haunt us in the dark. They know their place. They show respect. And so the dead beetle on the path lies unmourned and shining in the sun. One glance at it will do for meditation. Clearly nothing much has happened to it. Important matters are reserved for us, for our life, our death, a death that always claims the right of way. So it's not death that I'm interested in. It's the unmourned. It's the beauty of an object, a being, which we fail to recognize. So this is mallard. 2016, 2017. So again, I'm taking the dead mallard, out of its traditional context of the pond, and I'm placing it somewhere in a bed of flowers that I cut out from some paper to reinforce this idea of beauty, to present it in a new way. So at the same time, right, I'm investigating birds. I'm interested in birds. I'm interested in this idea of different species of birds and our impacts on these birds. And so I started to explore extinct species of birds: passenger pigeon, the heath hen, Labrador duck, Carolina parakeet, the great auk. And that led me to the exploration and researching the vain and myopic, quote-unquote, fad or fashion of late Victorian era's use of feathers and birds in art. And at this point, I want to quote a line from Shakespeare's 65th sonnet, which says, "How with this rage shall beauty hold a plea?" And I love that. There's so much in that series of few words. And so these are just images from that. In 1886, an ornithologist walking through Manhattan counted 700 people, and 535 of them had dead birds or feathers on their hats. And so to me, moments like that are kind of horrific, but as is this statement right here, Harper's Bazaar, 1875, the entire bird is used and mounted on wires and springs that permit the head and the wings to be moved about in the most natural manner, which to me freaks me out, right? If I'm walking by a person on the street and they pull a wire and the birds on their wings on their hat start to flap, I would lose my shit at that moment, right? Sorry. So, but this is Harper's Bazaar, 1875, okay? More images, right? The internet is a crazy place, but it does have a lot of information, which is kind of interesting. I love these two images right here. This is vengeance. This is retribution. This is the birds getting back at us, right? So I think this is fantastic. Love both of them. This is another image that I came across in my research, and it's one of my favorite images. This is a piece that is entitled "The Best Kind of Bird on a Hat." And as Emily Dickinson wrote, "Hope is a thing with feathers that perches on the soul." So look at these for a second, this idea of bird's wings. Look at this for a second, the bird on the hat. And then if you take a look around you, you'll see the connection to what I'm doing now, the idea of the head as a way to communicate with the viewer. So at this point, I was like, I can't do any more dead things, so I started work with living birds. And so this is one of the pieces that I did, ring-billed gull framed. Also did this one here, fun. I took a bunch of photographs of chickens that were in cages at the district fair, and then created this piece right here, kind of having fun with it, messing with the viewer a little bit. But also, for me, it's exploring what it means to be an artist and to be interested in birds and nature and environment. 2000 and probably 18, 19, I made this piece. And this is homage to the ivory-billed woodpecker J.J. Kuhn and Jay Tanner. So most of us know that that mankind decimated the passenger pigeon population, right? We just annihilated it. It went extinct because of us. And there are so many effects that we as human beings have on the world around us, and birds are these small, beautiful harbingers of life. And so if we're messing with the environment, they're going to tell us really quickly by their dying. So this right here is based on one of the only images of an ivory-billed woodpecker nestling as it landed on the head of the naturalist and guide J.J. Kuhn. So the ivory-billed woodpecker went extinct because of the Chicago Lumber Company cutting down its last North American habitat, the Louisiana Singer Tract down in Louisiana. So we killed this bird by deforestation. But in my exploration of that, I was given my sheets that I slept on at my grandparents' house. And so I included them in this image as ghosts of the trees that were taken down. And unbeknownst to me at the time, this became a jumping off point for using and reusing materials from everyday life in my art. So this piece, or part of it, is right there behind us. This is Shawnee Park from 2020. And no matter how often I walk around and through this park back home and pick up litter, dispose of the litter, I go back out for my next walk and it just reappears. It's there again. And so the only way that I really know how to kind of deal with that is to make art about it, to throw the garbage, the litter out, but also to make art about it. And as a whole, my goal with this piece was I wanted the viewer to approach this and experience the largeness of the problem because they're really large compared to what they are in real life. But I also wanted the viewer to take a look at the dried vegetation, right? To be able to smell the dried vegetation, to see the dirt on the ground, to see the objects that are hidden in it, and to recognize that this is the world around us, right? Everything that's in here, we created for consumption reasons, and then so much of it is just kind of left there. So we take, and then we don't dispose of properly. We don't take responsibility for the world around us. This piece is behind me right here. I think it's kind of self-explanatory. I was just kind of exploring the natural culverts and runoffs in my city one day after a rainstorm and kind of came across this right here in the stream and fished it out. And then I was that weird person with like 30 feet of gross, really disgusting shrink wrap following me home. But the important thing is I made art out of it, right? And I really love this piece. And I was telling Michael and Priya this the other day. I love this because when I look at it, it is realistic. It kind of looks like it, but at the same time, it's very abstract. There's notions of like this series of glaciers or sea ice that are melting in it, and I really appreciate that. It's nice when you like your own work. It's also when you put it away and don't look at it for like 6 months or a year, and then you put it back out and you're like, all right, I do know what I'm doing some days. So this is River Plastic, 2020-21. These paintings take me a long time. They're acrylic on on paper, and because I'm painting on paper with acrylic and I don't want it to warp, I have to use a small brush, but it's still fun, right? Art should be fun. This is a nation's nature, and so I walked around my neighborhood collecting garbage one week, put it in a bunch of boxes, I washed it, put it in a bunch of boxes, took it into a gallery a couple months later, and here we have the United States of America, our country. Now, what's really interesting and I find fascinating about this is it's really hard to see, but up here there is a Beanie Baby, which doesn't mean a lot to some of us, but to others it brings back memories that are kind of horrible and weird. But there's a Beanie Baby here which is covered in money symbols. I put it out here in Silicon Valley. I came back to package this work up, and somebody had moved it to Washington, D.C. I love that. I think that was fantastic, right? Like, if you're going to make my work better, go for it. Just better be better. So this is a piece right here, one after another, screen print on an Amazon box. So again, these last couple of pieces, right, I am using and reusing objects that are a part of my world, our world, and I'm making art out of them. This is right back there. This is a new piece. Did this a couple of, I don't know, probably 2-3 months ago. But the quote says, "Man is the filthiest animal that has ever trod the face of the earth, and every great nation in every part of the world has made a colossal mess as it has exploited its way through its own country," right? To me, this is absolutely in your face, and that's what I want it to be, right? So I collect boxes because I want to make things with them. I also have this really kind of cool idea in the back of my head, which I'm going to do, and I'm not going to share with you because then someone will steal it and do it themselves. But anyway, these are boxes from that collection, and I wanted to make sure that everybody got the message. So again, use materials that can enhance the message or add or bring somebody else into that dialogue. This is my most recent piece, and it's right back there. Again, this is a roll of either canvas-backed paper or paper-backed canvas that I found in a retired colleague's office. When she left, I stole her good art books and any materials that she left. And so I enjoy this piece. It's an oil on canvas. Again, it's pretty straightforward, but one of the things that I do is on my walks around my community, I will photograph these moments where somebody has thrown an incredible amount of garbage out on the curb to be picked up. And this was all on somebody's curb. And I was looking at this for a long while, but also thinking if there are people driving by or someone in this house looking at me right now, they're probably thinking this weirdo is going to do something a little bit crazy. So I'm looking at this and took a bunch of photographs, 360 degrees, and then painted it. It's not about the foliage. It's not about the location. It's about the objects. So I left the negative spaces where that grass is at. Instead, it is about the number of boxes that came out of this person's house. And I am just as guilty as anyone else, right? Every time, like, Amazon sends me something, I'm like, oh, yes. No, man, I just butchered like a tree or a quarter of one. So at the same time, I think it's really important as artists to have multiple bodies of work going at the same time because they can tell us something about what we are interested in. So I also do traditional portraits or semi-traditional portraits. This is Consumption, one of my friends. This is from 2019. So understandably, this piece conjures up this notion of the feed bag, and that's intentional, right? It's Walmart. So this idea of the feed bag. However, the genesis of this work comes from the frustration with our insistence and even dependence on the mass consumption of materials and ultimately the natural and finite resources. But I also want to poke fun at us. I want these to be a pathway into exploring the idea. This piece is right back there. This is Caitlin's crown, 2019. Here it's just a headdress that I built out of litter. For those of us who spent time using hot glue, it can really be a mess, but does work in some craft-like endeavors. So when I see trash, I try to pick it up, and sometimes I have to make art out of it. This is Millinery Magnificence. Again, when we look at something like this, I'm continuing to explore our relationship to the environment and to nature through the objects that are accessories to the figure, right? Styrofoam comes from oil. Oil comes from the ground. And in order to get that, we have to destroy the ground. And then something like this will almost never deteriorate. It just gets broken up into smaller and smaller pieces and consumed by creatures who don't know any better. So the painting is about litter. It's about consumption of natural resources. But I'm using the figure as a jumping off point for presenting this idea. We recognize ourselves in any given figure, right? We look at the eyes, it's like the first thing that we notice, then the ears, the nose, the mouth, etc. So we see something that is recognizable. And so I'm using the human figure and juxtaposing that with this garbage so that I can reinforce the connection between the two ideas, but so that I can do it in a way that is not off-putting. I don't want to lecture people too much. That's what that is about, and that is about, and that. These other paintings are about us kind of saying, yeah, we kind of suck, but this is cool. You're using some bright colors. I like this. I dig it. It's fun. You're an okay painter. See you later. This is Paper Canzoniere. This is a painting that done in 2021. Leslie, all of the figures in these, most of them are my students or community members that I work with. We sit down and we talk about ideas. I want their input, how they're going to be involved in the project. So I sat down with Leslie, and I was like, Leslie, I want to do this. I want to do a painting of you. Let's talk about this. And she's like, you know what, Josh, I got this great idea. And I said, share it. And she said, my parents grew up in this city in Mexico, small town actually, in Mexico, and they took their garbage and they walked to the edge of the town, and there's a little valley, and they just tossed their garbage in there. And I was like, whew, that is not good. And then I was like, wait a minute, that's exactly what I do. I take my garbage, I put it in a garbage can, in a garbage bag, and then someone collects it at the edge of the street, and then they take that into a landfill, and they cover it with sod, and poof, it's gone. It's magic. So, Paper Canzoniere, when Leslie was celebrating her quinceañera, this is the dress from that, and instead of the traditional plastic flowers, which would be a part of the quinceañera celebration, I said, how about we put some litter up there? And she said yes. So we did it. Super fun. This is Paris. Paris in flowers, 2021, maybe early 2022, something like that. And so as I continue to explore the nature of the figure, the representation of, and the interest in beauty, I've started to move and explore and use the background in different ways, right? Instead of just a decorative element, I'm starting to use it also as support material for the message. This is Michael T. Fast Casual right over there. This is a painting that hangs on my office wall because I have run out of room in my apartment for my work. If you go into my apartment, it is a continuous solo show of Joshua Newth's work. Not because, well, I do like my work, but also because there is no more places under my bed or in my closets to store these things. Anyway, so this is Michael T. Fast Casual from 2022. So when I do something like this, again, this becomes like, this is wallpaper back here, but if you take a second to look at it, I have taken the logos from all of these cups here, and I have put them in the background. But at the same time, this should hearken back or make a little bit of a connection for us to the Statue of Liberty and this idea of, yeah, this is a great country. We are pilfering the world around us and our natural resources just like everybody else is, right? So just take a moment for us to think about that. So from the ever-present siren song of capitalism and the continual promotion of the consumption of natural resources, from this continual threat of species and environmental extinction, we continue to try to march forward with our heads buried deep in the sand. And I want my art to illuminate, to shed a little bit of light on the fact that there are inherent consequences for our actions. And I want to leave you with, as young artists, the most important things you can do are look at the world around you, read things, and make things. And as Henry Miller, the great writer, says, art teaches nothing except the significance of life. Thank you.